data. You will be tested.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories.
Because it is not the government of the people any longer.
Circus ridiculous.
A new world order. A world where the rule of law governs the conduct of nations.
Most people do not understand the Illuminati.
It's all about control.
Conspiracy theories.
It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations.
A new world order.
Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
It's the Weekend Vigilante Show.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to the Weekend Vigilante Show. I'm your host, Sheila Zilinsky, joined tonight by my co-host, the one, the only, Dr. Timothy Ball, for Friday, the 13th of June, 2014, broadcasting live on TFRN. The call-in number to the studios is 1-866-37-TRUTH, and we will try to get to calls towards the end of the program. And what an incredible show tonight we have for you folks. We're joined by New World Order Wrecking Ball, Deborah Tavares from StopTheCrime.net, who is a highly acclaimed researcher and activist exposing corruption, including the DHS, the NSA, and UN's Agenda 21. She joins our good friend, the instigator of the airwaves, Dave Hodges, host of the popular Common Sense Show, an award-winning psychology professor and counselor. He's a college basketball coach, a political activist, and prolific writer who has published hundreds of powerful editorials and articles. What a 1-2 punch to the globalists we have on tonight, folks. We'll be joined by Dave Hodges in a bit, but Deborah Tavares, welcome to the program.
Well, Sheila, thank you so much for having me on tonight with such a nice lineup of people so that we can get this information out to everyone that's listening.
It is nice because I'll tell you what, there is a real dumbed and numbed public here that just doesn't have any idea of what's really going on, do they?
Well, you know, I believe everyone understands there's something terribly wrong. They just don't understand what it is. And sadly, that is as a result of many, many decades of dumbing down through the food supply, the water, the vaccinations, and the air, every aspect of the globe. We're literally in an eco-warfare.
Yes.
And I find that people want to know and they want to understand. They're afraid. And I can say, too, that as they start to learn, they do go through remorse, pain, really literally suffering from a warfare shock. Because what we've discovered, of course, is that we're all identified as the enemy of our corporate structure, Earth Inc. And it doesn't matter where you are, where you're listening right now, the globalists have a corporate structure that is literally strangling every aspect of our lives. And we're going to talk about that as it relates to the United States in documents and how it is forced globally as well. But I want to start out, I think, Sheila, by really underlining the foundation of where we're going to go tonight, because I think we can't build up from the horrific aspects of electromagnetic weapons, the hoax of global warming, the policies resulting from all of that are just literally slamming at our front doors, and people are wondering what on earth is going on. Well, what I want to do first is to talk about Senate Report 93549. And what is so important about that document, which, by the way, is a free download. In fact, any documents that any of the listeners hear me discuss tonight on the show are free downloads from StopTheCrime.net. Now, I know that at some points people aren't able to download for free for whatever reason. We do have a print shop set up. And for the cost of printing and shipping only, people can obtain any of the documents that they hear me speak of. So they can obtain these documents by calling area code 707-586-9558. Again, that's only if you're unable to download for free off of stopthecrime.net and our other websites as well. But the biggest threat, really the biggest threat, and the ultimate illusion is the fact that we're under a corporate construct and we face extinction. We face extinction unless we say no. And the only way that this corporate construct has continued to march down the throats of everybody is because we have been consenting by lack of knowledge. Our history has been stolen from us. The books have been stolen out of libraries. We have been educated through an indoctrination system that has incarcerated us by lack of knowledge, intentionally so. And then we add all of the added toxins and poisons that we spoke of a few moments ago, and we're in trouble. But I know deep down inside people realize that, and they've got to hurry up and understand what the situation is so that we can then deal with it. We can't deal with something we do not understand. And I would suggest the first thing, everyone go to stopthecrime.net, go to the USA Inc. link at the top of the website and start doing a little bit of homework. I'm going to actually talk about the corporate structure because we are USA Inc. and we are Earth Inc., as I just stated a little bit ago. And it's a corporate predatory government, and it's a mesh network of agencies who have managed to deceive the global population. And sadly, the tragedy of this corporate structure is the illusion of justice, freedom, and democracy. And I found this very interesting, and also I found this recently. It is a quote from Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens in 2010. And he said, "Corporations have no conscience, have no beliefs, no feelings, no thoughts, and no desires." Think about that. No feelings, no thoughts, and no desires. Well, I would say I disagree with the desires aspect because they're certainly most interested in their profit, their bottom line, to the disregard of life, the disregard of morals, and the disregard of ethics. And I would say one of the best reads to understand our plight globally right now would be to read Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars. And that's at the top of stopthecrime.net, again, a free download. But what is so important about Senate Report 93549? Well, we're identified as the enemy of the government, and we are. What occurred in 1933 that none of us were, well, very few of us at least, were taught in school intentionally to keep us numbed and dumbed down was America's gold was stolen. Our grandparents were struggling through the concocted war called the Great Depression. It was a war created by the banksters. And what occurred was we and our great-grandparents were collateralized against this phony fraudulent debt. Our property was collateralized, our sweat equity, our children, and our souls. And they believe they own it all. They believe they own it all. And ever since 1933, every single year, the sitting president of the United States has extended the national state of emergency. And what does that mean? One war declared upon another continuously. And now the current war of the war on terrorism. And what this annual extended national state of emergency does is it abolishes the Constitution. It abolishes law. And this is why people keep wondering, how on earth are all of these decisions coming via executive order through the president? Well, that is because everything now has gone through the executive branch and executive order and statutes. We are USA Inc. And what is really interesting, and I think people really need to understand how predatory this is, we're in grave danger because you build on top of a Federal Reserve system, of a debt note system, that took away our sovereignty in 1913. And then you build into 1933 the war that was declared on our grandparents and the fact that we were collateralized against the debt, identified as the enemy. And then you roll into the policies of the Bilderbergs in the early 50s, where they literally agreed to policies of war against the global population. And you can see in their policies, again, an important read, Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars, but you can see that they have one goal, and that is to control all energy on the face of the planet. Think about it. What is energy? Energy. Yeah, I mean, energy, Sheila, is everything. Everything. Plants, animals, water, food, and us. And more importantly, our brains, our minds. And that's where we're headed. That's where we are. We're literally at the precipice of transhumanism, where literally we are being replaced by machinery, by robotization. And we're going to get into that after I start talking about the climate action plans, policies that people can go immediately to their local cities and check out. Because, again, everything I'm talking about is fully documented.
Yeah, and I mean, so essentially, the United States has ceded control of its complete affairs to international bureaucrat and banksters, and it's absolutely under the control of foreign central banks who are imposing this military-industrial complex dictatorship, essentially. It's just shocking, some of the documents, Deborah, that you have on your website. I mean, it is just as deeply entrenched. And I mean, it is just absolutely nefarious meets craziness. And we're going to jump into the bowels of this. And first of all, welcome to the program, Mr. Hodges.
Well, about time.
Well, hi, Dave.
Sheila, someone or something, or Providence didn't want us to talk tonight. I started calling in about 5 minutes till. Started on a landline.
You're here now. We're glad.
I'm here now. Yeah, I just three phones later, Sheila.
Wow, Dave, yes. Well, welcome.
I apologize, but as you know, we were in communication, through text, but when I tried to call the number that you gave me to call in on, all I was getting was a fast, busy signal.
That's because we're jumping straight into the bowels of nefarious meets crazy, and we're Mach speed globalist ramp up here, playing out, like I was just saying, Deborah, like a bad science fiction movie. Where we're jumping in here, Dave, is this absolute nightmarish executive branch, the report 93-549, the Senate report, and the National State of Emergency, USA Inc. and Earth Inc. And Deborah, really tell our listeners why this thing is so important.
Well, it's crucial for everyone to understand that we don't have any representation. And people, sadly, do believe that we have representation. I know many people that believe just replacing local city council members or supervisors or their state and federal government heads will fix the problem. We're well beyond that. In fact, when you take a look at the Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars document, the entire voting structure and those that get into office is completely rigged. And it's been intentionally rigged to literally allow us to think that we have a government. It's the same rigging system that has set up the false judiciary system so that we believe we have justice in our court system. We couldn't be further from the truth because it's predatory. And the attorneys that represent us are predatory. You may have heard Karen Hudis, who was the former attorney for the World Bank, talk about the fact that all attorneys should just rip up their bar cards. They should immediately be taken out of any position at all. And quite frankly, from what I've read and understand, they've been fomenting the illusion by continuing to take us into a barbaric court structure where we'll spend our life savings. Many people are so upset when they spend years in court, and we've seen how these verdicts go on big tobacco. We're looking at now the idea that people can sue because they're becoming quite ill from the frequencies of the smart meter. We simply do not have any representation. And I think the sooner people swallow the pill and understand reality, and I would recommend this book. There are many reports But I would recommend this book. It's called The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America, by retired Judge Dale. It is a paper that he wrote, and he wrote a companion document to that as well. There's free downloads from our site, stopthecrime.net. The companion paper is The Matrix and the U.S. Constitution. And it's important to understand some of the things that he tells us, and all of the other documents tell us as well. I mean, literally, we've been denied our real history. And as I said earlier, books have been taken out of libraries. Our education system has been nothing more than indoctrination. You know, any symbols behind your name, MD, PhD, whatever it is, it's only an approval of your ability to regurgitate what you've been taught in school. That is indoctrination. And so I can say that sadly, we've had a massive hoax pulled on us because, number one, the federal and state governments aren't real. So if they're not real, and they are privately owned corporations, they're called governments. They call themselves governments. So what we really have is a construct of corporations and banks that have been posing as a legitimate government all these years, and they have not been. And we have been busy, made intentionally busy, high increasing divorce rates, stress with paying our bills. The Rand Corporation has seen to that, creating consumerism, trying to succeed beyond your neighbors, etc. We've been led into a false reality, and we're now in a virtual reality where literally what we see is a renormalization. Everything is being re-identified. In other words, the truth now is conspiracy theory, and the lies are real. Right now, the Common Core curriculum is teaching all our children that global warming is real in school.
We're going to jump around a little bit, but I do really want to get into that climate action plan because that, of course, Dr. Tim Ball, is your favorite topic. Weigh in on that, this climate action plan.
Well, of course, in British Columbia here, we're one of the first jurisdictions to have a climate action committee and to implement a climate action plan. And we're one of the first in North America to have a carbon tax. It's no coincidence that person that was appointed to that committee by the government was Andrew Weaver, who is the major climate modeler for the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So he wrote the computer models that produce the results that they want rather than doing proper science. And on the Climate Action Committee we have in BC, he was the major person on it and wrote a good portion of it. But it also was part of the introduction of smart meters, making them mandatory, and the whole application. And I think this is a very important point, Deborah, and I wrote an article just recently about Obama's plan. If what Obama was proposing was something truly original, nobody more willing to try new ideas than the American people, but it has already been tried and failed. For example, Maurice Strong, who was the power behind the Club of Rome and the Agenda 21. In fact, he organized the United Nations Environment Program, out of which came the climate change issue. In that same year of 1992, he was appointed the chairman of Ontario Hydro. Now, in Canada here, we call our government-run power utilities hydros because water power dominates in Canada. And Ontario Hydro is a crown corporation that controls all power production in Ontario. And he immediately implemented the plan that Obama's pursuing by shutting down the nuclear plants, closing the coal plants, and putting up wind turbines. And what happened was that from 1992, Ontario went from being the largest and biggest economy and most successful economy in Canada to being almost at the bottom. Now, in Canada, we have this great socialist approach that we take money from the provinces that are successful and call them have provinces and take that money through the federal government and give it to the unsuccessful provinces, the have-not provinces, instead of letting natural order work. You maintain and support those that simply are not working. And Ontario has gone from being a have province, now it's a have-not province. And so there's that problem. But there's another larger issue here in BC with an applied climate action plan. They set up government people to go around to different communities throughout the province. They began with showing Al Gore's movie, The Inconvenient Truth. And then from that, they went into the whole climate action plan and the control of CO2 and so on. It was quite frightening. But on one of the Gulf Islands that we have out here on the West Coast, Main Island, they got to one of these visitations from the government. They were told by these people, look, we're going to eliminate roads on the island. You're not going to be allowed to drive cars on the island. And we're going to control everything that goes on your island. And they suddenly started to realize, now this is important because these sorts of things can go on in a larger area, but because it was an island and because everybody on the island was very aware of what was happening, and that goes to Deborah's point about learning what's happening, they suddenly realized just how much they were going to lose total control of their lives. So they called me and I went over and gave them a talk about the other side of the climate issue. I guess what I'm saying is here in Ontario, with what Maurice Strong did, with the global application of a climate control plan, and then what Weaver did here in British Columbia with the direct application of a climate action plan, you've got examples of where this is going and where Obama's taking it in the United States, for example, with his control over the coal industry as part of that. So the problem is that it's done piece by piece. It's done a little bit at a time. By the time...
Very incremental, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's very incremental. And by the time people realize what is happening, it's too late. And I think that's the point that you're making, Deborah, that so much of this stuff has been going on piece by piece. But as I said, in those areas like Main Island, where the local people saw what was happening, they have, as many areas, and you and I know about this, Deborah, about people trying to separate their own communities to recover control of their community and recover control of their resources. Talked about water in California. But it's that problem of not only being aware of Agenda 21 and what it's doing, but how each event, every day, every week, these accumulative events. One of the ones I wanted to mention to you was, and you mentioned Chief Justice Stevens, but it was the Supreme Court that said, oh yeah, well, corporations can contribute just like citizens. So what you're doing there is you're personalizing corporations to donate and control politicians. And it's that kind of thing that is really...
We don't have politicians in the sense that we are run by a corporation and corporations through the executive branch via executive order. The idea of politicians is a daily soap opera. It's to give the illusion...
Deborah, just hold that thought for a second. When we come back from the break, we're going to jump right back into this idea that we don't have any representation. Back right after the break.
So, you want the news and information without the hate, the hype, the fear? Well, you've come to the right place. You can support Truth Frequency Radio by spreading the word on social networking sites like Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite forums. Want to take Truth Frequency Radio on the road? Listen on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or other mobile devices. Want more than just the free stuff? Sign up for a VIP membership for as little as $4 a month and get super high-quality downloads, member-only content, and instant access to your favorite shows without the wait. It's only through your loving support that we're able to cover the cost and continue broadcasting. So now, stay tuned for more Free Speech Radio, right here on the Truth Frequency Radio Network. KTFRN, worldwide.
is the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
We're joined by Deborah Tavares from StopTheCrime.net and, of course, Dave Hodges, the popular Common Sense Show host. And if you go to WeekendVigilante.com, of course, both these amazing guests are linked there. You wrote a scathing article, Dave Hodges, on weaponizing water. Jump in on this topic. I mean, we're going to get into water here. You and I and Tim have said before, 21st century issue. I always say, you need water just to think about water, and it's very scary, nefarious, and insidious what's going on with our water, is it not, Dave?
Well, it is. It's very well planned and orchestrated. In fact, you, Tim, and I did a show on this almost 2 years ago now, and we were talking about what had happened in Bolivia and how T. Boone Pickens is buying up the Ogallala underground water aquifer, largest one in the United States. Water in Michigan was being shipped out to China and taken in Sprag bags, and this abuse and tyranny is continuing as the powers that be are making water prohibitively expensive. And what they do in particular now in places like Venezuela and Paraguay, just to mention a couple, the World Bank likes to go in with corporations like Bechtel, and they like to loan them money that they're definitely going to default on, loans are going to default on, I should say, and then the powers that be own their water system as well as other infrastructure, and the people end up paying often 3 to 5 times more for the product than they would ordinarily. And in particular in Venezuela now, the actions of the government, we thought the previous regime was bad. This government, instead of treating water and transporting water and maintaining water supplies, they're choosing to pay off bondholders with the available money, preferred insiders, and meanwhile the people stand in lines that are blocks and in some cases miles long to get water just to take home and drink. I mean, the situation in some parts of Venezuela is now catastrophic. This is a major human rights violation. It's going to come here. We're seeing here just in my own area, in the Phoenix area, some particular local water companies are selling out to corporations, and when the corporations take them over, they jack the rates up, and there's no method of appeal. You can't unelect some water board or some political body that oversees them. It's just we're raising the rates, and there's nothing you can do about it. And if you control water, you ultimately control food, and you ultimately control people.
Yes.
And this is going on all across the planet. And I think we can talk about all the programs that we want, that the globalists are imposing upon humanity to control humanity. But if you look at what I think is the bottom line program, it is the control of water, because it's the one resource that everybody needs. We don't all need oil. We can walk to or ride bikes to where we need to go. But if you don't have water, you don't survive more than 3 days.
Well, that's absolutely true, and this is Deborah. I want to jump in right now because I think everybody needs to understand what these climate action plans are right now in your communities. They are requiring a 20% reduction in water. Whether you're in an engineered drought in California where our governor has required 20% reduction, and we're all now in a stage 2 drought. Cash for grass, where if you take out a square foot of grass, you'll get a 50-cent rebate up to $1,000. And we are just having meetings now here in California, and the climate action plans here in Northern California have some of the most aggressive dates of any plan in the entire country. And what do I mean by that? We're supposed to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions 25% below 1990 levels by the end of 2015. Now, what does this really mean? Massive and fast corporate takedown. And we're seeing water attacks here now in our city. In fact, right now, as we speak, in Sacramento, they're writing a groundwater management plan. And the key they keep saying to the plan is monitoring, and they want to monitor all rural property wells. Rural. They're saying that the rural wells are straws in the ground. We're taking too much water, far more water than agriculture. And we're up here in the wine country where we have thousands and thousands of acres of vineyards. And I can tell you, Bohemian Grove is just half an hour here away from us as well. And we know that all of the big guys are going to have all the water they want. But what I would like to encourage everyone to do, we did an emergency town hall conference, and it's up on YouTube. It's called Who is Running America? And we go into detail about these climate action plans. But for everyone that's listening right now, how you can empower yourself and know what's happening in your city, just type in the name of your city. Type in greenhouse gas reduction policies. Because I found if you type in climate action plan, you may find that your city has called it something else. I know that cities are calling it green plans, energy plans, but if you just type in your town, and again, type in policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, you will find plans already in your cities. In fact, now in the United States, they're rewriting our general plans in our communities that are plans exactly like the reduction of greenhouse gas emission requirements. But what is really horrific about these plans is they're right now, and they're training at the Department of Energy these in-home energy audit assessors. And with your code enforcement officers in your city, they're going to go through your neighborhoods, businesses and schools, whether you rent, lease, or own. They're going to knock on your door, and they're going to tell you that they have to conduct an energy audit. Now, the Department of Energy has said it's a scorecard of 1 to 10, 1 being inefficient and 10 being efficient. The rating of your buildings are going to be put on a massive database. The census, how many people live in your home, and the square footage of your residence. Now they're going to come in with equipment. They're going to test to see if you have any air intrusion. In other words, are your windows secured? Do you have proper insulation in your attic crawl spaces? They're going to look at your appliances, whether or not you have installed and replaced all your inefficient appliances. So inefficient appliances are all appliances that are not Energy Star rated. And it's interesting because the rating process of Energy Star is not rating gas. So what we found in our Sonoma climate action plans here, actually the Santa Rosa climate action plan, and I would recommend everyone go to stopthecrime.net, click on the top of the home page, climate action plan link, and you'll get all the documents that I'm talking about right now. But I can tell you that we also have a division within our police department, newly formed, well, newly in the mid-90s. It is a pilot, they say. Nothing is a pilot. Whenever they say it's a pilot, that's only to calm people down, to let them think that they may see if it'll work, and if it doesn't, they'll disband it. That's not the case. They said the same thing when they were deploying smart meters. We're doing pilot deployments. No, they were doing the entire country, in fact, the entire globe. But nonetheless, we have a pilot program where we have a police division that is entitled the Environmental Crimes Task Force. Now, they're going to be implementing all the requirements of these climate action plans. And all of us are going to find that we're going to be penalized and forced to make these energy audits, anything that is checked off that is required to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions is going to be required to be done. They've got green loans, as I call them, but they're loans by companies here in Northern California. They're 7% simple interest between 10 and 20 years. They must be collateralized against your property, and that's how you're going to pay for the replacement of all of your appliances. This includes your heat and air equipment, your bathroom fans, all of your appliances, all of your devices. Any and everything that plugs into a wall has to have 5.
So, Deborah, really what you're saying here, though, this is complete, total takeover, and it's eco-police on steroids, really, is what you're saying.
Well, I hope that that's what I'm conveying, because that's exactly what it is. And what we see happening is this quickly going through all of our cities. It's like a wildfire. And it's beyond belief. I found some emails between law firms from New York and California, and they're excited about the new green litigation that's going to come out of all of this entangled, the new green economy. And really what's behind this new green economy are jobs, just service jobs, to enforce all of these rules and regulations of these climate action plans. We're literally now being watched on our water usage here. Our neighbors have been told that if you see a neighbor watering on a day that they're not supposed to, contact the code enforcement. Now, I sat in the last few months on a number of water meetings, and code enforcement was there, and they had a smile, and they said, we're going to use the carrot approach to advising people that they're using water when they shouldn't. And then, of course, I said, well, when you're not using the carrot approach, what does that look like? They said, well, we have the authority to turn off water. And everybody grimaced. But this is our reality. This is a elimination of resources. And what I discovered when I was doing research for the smart meters, and it's posted on stopthecrime.net under the Climate Action Plan link, is what the Department of Energy has said. This is pretty deplorable. They say the real goal of energy use is they're aiming for zero. They say it's not new technology, learning to live in a new reality. Behavior modification, learning to live without energy. This is absolutely the Hunger Games. This is what the wildlands is all about, because these climate action plans have embedded in them the requirement for all cities to create these, what they call these city growth boundaries. So everyone that's listening, you can go down to your building department or your planning department, and you can ask for the city growth boundary. It will be a boundary that's drawn around your city. You don't see it, obviously, but you can see it on paper. And you have to find out if you're within that boundary or are you outside. If you're outside of that city growth boundary, you are in the country and you're considered sprawl and unsustainable. This is one reason why our road structure has not been maintained, and they've been using our gas tax to take us over, have not been repairing roads, because roads do not need to take us where they have in the past, because we're literally being bought out of anything outside of these city growth boundaries. And I can tell you, permits, if you're not inside the city growth boundaries, are going to be very difficult to get. The EPA is coming down on people, the Fish and Game, the U.S. Forestry, with fines and penalties, because these are all corporate agencies that were put in place through the White House, through the executive branch, via executive order. We are being consumed by corporations. This is unlawful, and we must not consent. What I'd like to say is when you go to the homepage of stopthecrime.net, click on a link right on the homepage. It says Government Employee Questionnaire. And for those of you that are in the United States, and you can fashion it to your country as well, because this is all corporate statutes. These are not laws under any kind of a constitution. And because of the corporate structure, Judge Dale tells us in his book, The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America, that we must and must not submit to these corporate statutes. So we have a form created. If you have a government employee of the corporation that comes to your home, and utility companies are also phoning, and they're saying, we'll give you a free energy audit. In fact, you may be eligible for some free light bulbs, maybe a refrigerator. Let us come in and do an audit. Don't let them come into your home. Do not. Do not let them onto your property. But don't be belligerent about it. Just hand them the form, the 2-page form. The main gist of the form is to have them show you where you agreed to these corporate statutes. We did not. All that is required for this system to continue is our lack of understanding what this system is. And that is what is required. And we can read about the system, understand the system that we're in. Again, I highly recommend that you go to YouTube, watch Who is Running America and the Climate Action Plans. We detail out how your cities are all incorporated, how all of your city council members are all corporate employees. They do not serve you. we pulled even the corporate public speaking because they want you to believe that you have input, and they don't. That's why you're given a few minutes to speak. And basically, you've had your say, and they want you to go away. Many people are starting to recognize that they're not having any influence in their local government because they're not. They haven't been attending meetings. They haven't realized that it's all set up under the RAND Corporation. It's a corporate meeting style called the Delphi technique, where decisions have already been determined, the policies have already been written, and they let you think that you've got input on these policies that are done. And that is how they continue to pull off this illusion. And I'll just let other people jump in after I say this, but what has happened is we've all been indoctrinated through expert programming and conditioning and education and prejudice and patriotism. And we're treating information like this, of course, as being ridiculous and absurd and untrue.
Deborah, just a few points. And of course, Samuel Johnson said patriotism is the last refuge of a scoundrel. I think we know what he means now. But your comment about the rural area outside of the city limits is extremely important, because one of the targets for Obama are the suburbs. They see the suburbs as the living off of the core area of the city, and representing, of course, white, wealthy America. And the suburbs has long been a target for Obama and the group. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is that the U.S. has the advantage now, and I agree with you, you've lost a lot of it, but other countries never had it. And that's why I mentioned the Canadian example. Now, let me start out by going back to the climate issue. Notice that all the focus is on temperature, all the focus is on warming, when in fact we've been cooling for 17 years, and they're trying to cover that up. But when they talk about precipitation, the data is worse than it is for temperature, but they're quite certain when they come out and say, oh well, with global warming there'll be less precipitation and more droughts. And of course that's part of the play of the climate action plan. Oh well, we've got to prepare for this because we know more droughts are coming. If you think about it, it's completely counterintuitive scientifically, because if the globe warms up, the air can hold more moisture, there's more evaporation, and therefore the potential for rain increases and doesn't decrease. So that lie is built into that whole climate action plan. The other thing I wanted to mention is, and I've been involved with dealing with this whole water issue, surface and groundwater in Canada for a long, long time. Now they had a drought. It was part of a regular drought in Alberta. One farmer needed water for his cattle. He went and got a backhoe and started to dig what we call a dugout, digging down about 15 feet into the ground and allowing the groundwater to fill that in to get water for his cattle. The government showed up and said, sorry, you can't do that. You only own the top 7 inches of the soil, and that the government owns everything below that. And what had happened was, and I tried to warn, I went around Alberta on a dog and pony show saying they're changing the Water Rights Act in Alberta. You're going to lose complete control of the water on your land. And suddenly when the drought came, and here we had an example of it, that's what's coming at you. Now, just one last point, Deborah. The NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, was all about water. We already had 80% free trade between Canada and the U.S., so what was left to trade? And the answer is water. And when you look at the two chief negotiators for NAFTA, both of them, their careers were built around water. The American one was Clayton Yoder, Reagan's Secretary of Agriculture. His doctoral thesis was on the need for a continental water policy. He spent 3 years with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who, of course, as you know, effectively control a lot of water in the U.S., and he spent 3 years with them estimating how much water there was in Canada. On the Canadian side, the negotiator worked for a company that is planning, and that they've asked me for technical information on it, to build a dam across James Bay, let James Bay pump out the brackish water, let it fill up with fresh water, and then take that through Lake Huron into the Chicago River and out to the American Midwest. And when you start plotting the interconnection of rivers across North America, it is absolutely incredible what already exists. So that's a basis of where we're headed.
Well, that's true. I'm going to add a few comments to this because we have a document that was given to the ranchers. There was a meeting here in Northern California in an area where there's large dairy farms, and the area is known for cheese. And most recently, within the last couple of months, the USDA met down there along with some environmental groups. And what the USDA was there for was to have these farmers fill out disaster forms. Because of the drought, a lot of the farmers have had to truck in water and bring in hay because their pastures with lack of water are not enough grazing. And so they were there to fill out these forms. And they were questioning, how did they find out about this meeting? I mean, there was not enough advance notification of this meeting. So there were only just a few farmers that were there. Well, what was very alarming, no one really caught this, and we have this up on YouTube. It's entitled The Land Grab. If you go to stopthecrime.net, it's on our YouTube channel. And we filmed this meeting. And what was horrifying about it is I picked up a book at the meeting about grazing. And one of the books is called Strategies for Mitigating Climate Change in Agriculture. And it's dated April of 2014. Again, that is called Strategies for Mitigating Climate Change in Agriculture. Now, what is extremely disturbing about this is who's involved in this? Well, the World Bank, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We have the FDA. We have the Food and Agriculture Organizations of the United Nations. We have meatless groups, many meatless groups. So what is happening with these climate action plans with the rural areas? What they want is they want these rural areas returned to natural habitat and forest because they are claiming that any animal, we're talking even chickens, of course, is implementing too much greenhouse gas emissions, and it is unsustainable. And what these poor farmers don't realize is what this means. To them, it's doublespeak, and it is doublespeak. We are being absolutely taken down by lack of knowledge, by doublespeak, and by a very skilled plan called the Delphi technique that was, again, put out by the Rand Corporation in the 1960s, a format in which to manipulate meetings. They have trained facilitators. They're up there. They write things on easels. They don't let you talk. They tell you that it's for public meetings, but it's not. They limit your speaking, and in fact, we've just posted one of these meetings. It's a water grab meeting today, and it's entitled Water Wars here in California, and what water grab looks like at a water meeting. And I would recommend everyone, again, go to Stop the Crime, click on our YouTube channel at the top of the website, and take a look at this, because we put the questions that the public was allowed to ask at the end. And you're going to hear some very disturbing questions. We have discovered here just what you were saying, Dr. Bell. Behind these water agencies, again, is the Rand Corporation, the World Bank, Bechtel. In fact, right now in Siskiyou County, which is in Northern California, we have Crystal Geyser getting ready to do an environmental impact study so that they can start bottling water from Mount Shasta. This is very...
Deborah, we're going to jump into a break, and when we come back from the break, we'll hear more about that, as well as an NWO exposed report from 1969, and we're going to link some of this together right after the break. Welcome back to the final hour of the Weekend Vigilante Show. We're joined by Deborah Tavares. She's from StopTheCrime.net. It's LinkedIn on the page. WeekendVigilante.com is our website. And, of course, Dave Hodges from the Popular Common Sense Show. Dave, you've covered, Agenda 21 extensively. You've covered water. You've covered the gambit. Weigh in on this, Dave.
Well, the game is over. That's the bottom line here. And it's going to take a complete overhaul of the federal and state structure to effect a change on the local level that's been totally obfuscated by the powers that be. There's nothing under the existing system, in my opinion, that can be done to turn this around. It's going to take people in the streets like it was in Bolivia in 1999 and 2000, where they kicked Bechtel out for basically trying to ruin people's access to water and their own infrastructure. And the same thing is coming here. We have an international corridor of highways that are owned by the globalists. We don't own them. We pay the tax on them. We paid to build them. We pay to maintain them, but we do not control them. They're toll roading everything. And if you just look at natural resources in general, you own nothing. You do not own your house because you pay property tax on it. You own absolutely zero. And when you look at social services, as you know, I've been involved heavily with taking on the scourge of intrusions into the family by the various CPSs that are all connected now through Obamacare. All CPS agents have been federalized. You don't even have parental rights any longer. Every aspect of American life and civil liberties is gone. We have the pretense of it. And we may have these people stand up in their city council meetings and the state legislators in the Congress and put their hand over their heart and say the pledge, but they're no more than the mafia. And this is what we're controlled by today. We're controlled by a corporate mafia that is genocidal. The FEMA camps have been built, and people like the four of us have reservations.
Well, Dave, to that I want to say that we really are now incarcerated in our homes with all of the frequencies that we've brought into our homes and the smart meters and now all of the new devices. In fact, we've been tricked through convenience for humanity, and we've been fooled. And behind all of these wireless communication devices are, of course, Trojan horse electronic doodads, all the wireless, for monitoring and controlling. What I'm most concerned about, and we can talk about this, because I don't see taking to the streets as being viable in the sense that we've got a fully deployed system now that the telecom industry has deployed with all of the hidden cell phone towers, antennas, the Gwyn towers, and literally they're able to utilize those frequencies for crowd dispersion, etc. In fact, a group of us were at Bohemian Grove just last year, and we were hit with directed energy weapons. And we're at a point now where literally if we band together on the streets, they're going to take us out more easily.
Deborah, I didn't say that taking to the streets was plausible or would even be successful. I'm saying all legitimate avenues of social and political change have been terminated.
That's right. I agree with you. However, we can do one thing, and that's to recognize the system we're in and get out of the illusion. And I think everybody needs to read The Great American Adventure, Secret of America, because the very last section of that book talks about what we can do. We have a monster chewing us up. There's no question. But we have to throw as many sticks into the spokes of this as possible. And we have to stop consenting to this corporate statutory structure that is literally consuming us. I agree. And in fact, in the document that you were just talking about, that we were going to discuss right after the break, because Sheila, you had mentioned about the New World Order Exposed document, 1969. And right at the beginning of this document, which again is a free download from StopTheCrime.net, go to the source document tab at the top of the website, and it's entitled NWO Plans, Exposed by an Insider, 1969. Again, NWO Plans, Exposed by an Insider, 1969. And I will tell you, Dave, you're correct, because even in 1969, they said that everything is in place and nobody can stop us.
Well, you know what's amazing too, Deborah, over that document is everything is in place, and they actually said in that document, everything's in place and nobody can stop us now. People will have to get used to this change, and you guys talked about incrementalism, and in this document is population control, permission to have babies, redirecting the purpose of sex, and basically, encouraging homosexuality, sex education as a tool of world government. It talks about a similar Common Core type of thing, families to diminish in importance. Dave, you're dealing with that now. A planning over the control over medicine, elimination of private doctors through a system like Obamacare. I mean, this is a sci-fi come to life, isn't it, Deborah?
Well, it most certainly is, and I would recommend everybody read it, because what I believe, and let's talk about that, because what I see right now is knowledge, trying to assist people with understanding. Everybody innately knows there's something terribly wrong. And I think if we can, as this show is doing right now, as this program is doing, impart knowledge so that people won't be as emotionally riveted and go into PTSD as they discover their reality, and at least attempt to survive it as long as we can, because there are things we can do. We do have a solutions page on stopthecrime.net, and we have ways in which people can get information out. We've got to look at fortifying our neighborhoods as best we can, because we do have an intention to increase frequencies. And recently discovered here in the Bay Area on BART, the train system, it should be under the just added link, but what has been occurring since January of 2014 is kids, young adults, have been amassing between 50 and 100. They board the BART train. They literally injure, harm, and rob the passengers on the train, and then they get off. And the police are calling this wilding. Now, the Aquarius operations briefing and many documents that we have posted on our website talk about the ability of mind control and frequencies. And these kids are using all the wireless devices. It's addictive. And literally, it's taking over their minds. It's literally able to control their thoughts, their actions, and direct their physical bodies into unsuspecting people. I mean, we're seeing this happen all over the country. And the Aquarius operations briefing talks to that specifically. And again, that's at the top of stopthecrime.net. It's only a 50-page document. But what's interesting is the very last page is all about cell phone towers. And even in the NASA war document that we've posted, it talks about towers there as well. So we have a mind control frequency mesh network that is fully engaged.
Well, Deborah, speaking of that, I'd like you to actually talk a little bit about the NASA Word document and sort of tie all these documents in, because that is mind-boggling what it actually says in there about the, these various frequencies and silent weapon system. It's actually quite alarming. I would like you to highlight some of the more staggering facts in an actual NASA document.
Yeah, it is. And again, it's a free download. I've done a number of shows. We met with military personnel and got the acronyms defined where we were able to, and did quite a bit of research to really speak to what this document is talking about. But I wanted to say one final thing about the NWO plans exposed by an insider in 1969. And I wanted to just tell everyone what it says in conclusion of that document. It basically says that a totalitarian system will be brought in, and anyone that is not in agreement with the system will be dealt with humanely. So, in other words, they're going to be eliminated. And what we have and have been seeing for many, many decades, and the report from Iron Mountain, which came out shortly after they assassinated John F. Kennedy, again, that's a very important document as well. But that document talks about how they were going to reduce the population annually, and they've been doing that. We have been disappearing. The census is not reporting the true census. All of the global warming hoax talks about overpopulation. That is not true. We are not birthing enough now to even sustain. It's 1.9, and it takes 2 births in order to just keep up with the population. We're falling, but we have disappearing of people. People are disappearing, and that's one cover for the allowing of the open borders, is to fill up the vacant houses, to fill up the streets. It's many purposes, opening up the borders.
Deborah, can I jump in on the NASA thing? The NASA thing is a very important issue. One of the problems that I have when I talk to the public about how they've corrupted climate science, people have a hard time believing that, first of all, in most countries, the U.S. less so, that their governments would do these sorts of things. But they also have a hard time believing that a small group of people could affect this much control. And also there are agencies within government that have more trust amongst the public. And those are the ones that you've got to watch. And NASA is one of those. NASA, of course, with all its moonshot and all the rest of it, very high profile. But NASA has been the major agent of the whole global warming hoax. It's really not a hoax, it's a deliberate deception. And one of the people who is part of the global agenda is former Senator Tim Wirth. He's now at the United Nations on Ted Turner's money, but when he was a senator, he got together with Gore to organize the selling of the whole global warming fiasco. They found out that there was a scientist at NASA by the name of James Hansen who was prepared to appear before a Senate committee and say that he was 99% certain that humans were causing the warming. But, of course, that was not true, but here was a NASA scientist willing to say that. Just to give you an idea of the level of deception, what Wirth did was that they determined what was the hottest day of the year in Washington on average. That was the day they scheduled the hearing for and Hansen's appearance. They then went in the night before. Now, this is a U.S. senator. They went in the night before, opened all the windows, and shut off the air conditioning. And so, of course, everybody's sitting in this sweating hot room, and what are they talking about? But, global warming. And Hansen is pushing it. Now, Wirth is, in 1993, he said, we've got to ride the global warming issue. Even if the theory of global warming is wrong, we will be doing the right thing. And as I said, he's now at United Nations pushing that whole agenda. Now, James Hansen got appointed to the head of NASA GISS. GISS is the Goddard Institute of Space Studies. And of course, NASA was interested in what the atmosphere was doing because of friction on their satellites and all the rest of it. But Hansen got control of the global weather data. And he spent all of his career manipulating that. He, for example, when Gore got up and said the 1990s was the warmest decade ever, and 9 of the 10 warmest years in the U.S. were in the 1990s, that was simply wrong. The 1930s was the hottest year, or 1934 was the hottest year, and 4 of the 10 warmest years were in the 1930s. But Hansen manipulated the data to make it look that 1990s was warmer. What they were also doing was lowering all of the historic record, and this has been done around the world. We've got lawsuits in New Zealand right now, and we're working on one in Australia, where they lowered the historic record, which of course then made the slope of the increase of temperature look greater than it actually was. So NASA's been very involved in this. Now NASA, GISS, Hansen was an employee of the federal government, and yet he was arrested 3 different times for public protest as a government employee, and in fact he was arrested outside of the White House. He also flew to England to give evidence at a trial on behalf of 4 Greenpeace people who bombed a power plant. When I spoke to Hanson's boss, and I said, look, the Hatch Act prevents him from doing this. And he said, yeah, we know that. And he said, we were told to leave him alone. And I said, well, who told you? He said, somebody pretty high up. And I said, how high? He said, just about as far as you can go. And of course, at that time, it was Al Gore. So NASA, as a vehicle for all of this warming agenda, is very much in it. And of course, as I said, it's an agency that's got a high approval rating, if you want, with the public. So this is just the kind of thing that's going on.
Well, I think it's important to point out that when people look at the report from Iron Mountain, that was put together 2.5 years in the early 60s. And it was, the reason they call it Iron Mountain is it was the first meeting in the nuclear survival retreat where they also store documents and where some of the large corporations were going to seek shelter should there be any kind of a global event. But they met there in the beginning, the first meeting and the last meeting, and it's entitled The Report from Iron Mountain. What they talk about there, Dr. Bell, is the fact that they were going to increase the ecology, the environment, and they were going to use NASA and the corporation, the corporate structure, to create the mess that we all have. We definitely have an environmental disaster that was created intentionally so that they could design it around the ecology, say that it was all of us that did it. They admitted it would take many decades to create, but it would have to be a creation of a fear to replace the idea of war, so that we would all be so fearful. And you're right. The NASA document that we'll talk about right now, again, on the top of stopthecrime.net, there are many agencies involved, and NASA is as evil as it gets. There's no question it's part of the corporate structure. It's part of the takedown. It was part of the creation of global warming. It's been part of poisoning our sea, our air, our water, intentionally, to collapse our country, move everything out of our country overseas. This is all behind NASA, the Air Force, DARPA, CIA, FBI, Southern Command, Atlantic Command. These are all of the agencies that were involved in that 2001 NASA war document that we found on the NASA website. And what you spoke about, Dr. Ball, about the idea of NASA creating this on page 8 of their document, or it's a PowerPoint presentation, actually, by one of the NASA scientists from Langley. And it says on page 8, Spaceship Earth, the crew, that's us, the crew is plundering the ship's supplies, tinkering with the temperature and life support controls, still looking for the instruction manual, engaging in bloody skirmishes in every corner of the vessel, increasing the size of the crew by 2 million per week. So NASA has been fomenting this whole global warming. In fact, on page 9, they talk about how humans have taken over and vastly shortened evolution of the planet. They say we've caused global warming, pollution, and deforestation. Everyone needs to look at page 9, look at the word deforestation. They also talk about how they discuss how they're going to replace all of our brick-and-mortar schools with all downloadable programs in our mind. In fact, when you go to the scroll that we have going by on the top of stopthecrime.net, we've paired that page of plug and play in that NASA document with a movie that came out in the 90s, and you'll see how the predictive programming in movies plays into everything that's occurring as well. But what I wanted to say about the NASA document, the title of this document is Robots, Cyborgs, and Humans. And what they say about humans on page 93 is, well, actually on page 66, they say increasingly critical are human limitations and human downsides. Humans are too large, we're too heavy, we're too tender, we're too slow physically and mentally, we require huge cost, and humans have rapidly decreasing to negative value added. This is where we get into the transhumanism agenda. In fact, we do have a link on Stop the Crime. It's called No More Humans. I would recommend that everybody understand, because on page 67 of this NASA document it says, robots in the large. Robots enhance affordability, redefines risk and threat to the environment, and enhances effectiveness. We are literally being replaced.
Dave, you've written extensively on the transhuman agenda. I want you to jump in here and weigh in on the transhumanism.
Well, that's the ultimate goal. But they first need to significantly reduce the population. And the people, if you look at the work of people like Daniel Estulin and what Steve Quayle has also written on this, on xenogenesis in his new book, you get a real similar picture. And the picture is very disturbing. There are 7 billion of us here, and that certainly doesn't even come close to the carrying capacity of this planet, either in water or food. We do not have a resource problem. We have a hoarding problem. And we have a hoarding problem because the super rich are trying to control every single resource on this planet to the exclusion of the majority. When they flip the depopulation switch, and they're going to do it on a number of fronts, and food and water are merely just a couple of these, then when they reduce the population, they will usher in their brand of transhumanism. In other words, the elite will have the life extension technologies, which they're already enjoying. I mean, look at the old geezers here who should have passed a long time ago in their upper 90s, and they're still making planetary decisions. But they're going to meld man and machine and create a brand new species. They want to morph humans that live today into something that makes the island of Dr. Moreau look like child's play. And that particular class of humans, that's the one that they're going to allow to survive, will be the slaves of the elite. And when they say they want to reduce the population to no more than 500 million, they are not joking. Not just their white papers say it, but they say it through their actions. And this is why I go back, and if I could just download a chip into everyone's brain and get them to understand one thing, it's this. You have no chance if you don't rise up against these people, and do so right now. Now, even if we rise up, we may fail, but we are destined to become extinct as the species that we know if we continue along with this agenda. Now, this isn't the world according to Dave Hodges. I have done a fair amount of research into this. As I said, everybody from Barb Peterson to Steve Quayle to Daniel Estulin, and they all have reached the same conclusion by looking at the words that the globalists write themselves. It's not our interpretation of what they write, it's what they write directly. And actions speak louder than words. And when you have centers in the United States, when they are forming new breeded species between humans and animals, as Jesse Ventura called it, humansies, for example, the interbreeding of man and ape to create a new species, you have just the nightmarish hell of what's going on in this planet and what lies in our future. Transhumanism is the end of the human species as we know it.
We're going to talk more about that when we come back from the break. Transhumanism.
Trailhead full of zombies. I met a strange lady. She made me nervous. She took me in and gave me breakfast. And she said, we were made to be courageous. We were made to lead the way. We could be the generation that finally breaks the chains. On the front line.
I mean, Deborah, here's the thing. We've all seen these disastrous scenarios in movies like I Am Robot or Eagle Eye when these sinister computers and robots become uncontrollable. This isn't something out of a Mary Shelley Frankenstein film. This is real-life sci-fi, folks. And, Deborah, we've come to the point when, controlled human evolution's now unfolding. And, in fact, if you grab, folks, the copy of Time magazine, and it's 2 months ago, the front page is 2045, the year man becomes immortal. We're talking about immortality here. We're talking about post-humanism, and the elite believe that this will happen. This technological process will continue to be concentrated, like right out of this NASA document we're talking about. Plan is to incrementally move the human mind into a more futuristic vehicle, not bodies, vehicles. First, a humanoid robot controlled entirely by human brain machine interface, a conscious human brain transplanted, I guess maybe Deborah, uploaded into a computer is a better term. I mean, this is really unfolding, isn't it?
Well, it absolutely is. In fact, they're really identifying it now. It's an incremental process, and they're now calling it the global mind. And this is when we get into talking about quantum computers. This is really why I went up to Portland, Oregon, and interviewed Barry Trower, because I found a document on the White House website that was very, very disturbing. And you can listen to that interview with Barry Trower. It's entitled The Cooking of Humanity. And I would take a look at that because I found this, our research team found this 13-page document on the White House website talking about realizing the full potential of government health spectrum to spur economic growth. Now, I bring you back to the reality that we're the enemy. It's a corporate structure. And so when they talk about government health spectrum for economic growth, it's their growth. Within that document, again, I do show that on the Cooking of Humanity. And they're showing how they're literally going to turn up all the frequencies on the country. And this, again, is psychotronic weaponized warfare for mass mind control. And I would say Eagle Eye is a good movie to watch to understand a bit about quantum computers. Also go to our website, No More Humans. You mentioned the website 2045. That's the year 2045.com. You can also click on Bio App. And you were talking about the various movies, all predictive programming, all showing us where they were leading us. And quite frankly, our young children are really not as we were as young children. They're already entrained with these frequencies because they're all wired up wirelessly with their iPhones and their computers. This is one of the aspects behind the new Common Core curriculum with Bill Gates. He wants to see wireless computers deployed in all schools. Well, this is literally taking over our minds. And there's an excellent movie. Well, I wouldn't say excellent. It's a movie worth watching. It's called The Cabin in the Woods. The reason I'm recommending it is it's really showing the sociopath's desire to play games with us. It's almost as though, Dave, you had mentioned Dr. Moreau's Island, and I agree it's far worse, although Dr. Moreau's Island is bad enough. The Cabin in the Woods shows how these people are in their bunker, so to speak, in their computer dugouts, and they're literally watching how they've wired up a particular house in the woods and how they're making wagers on the survivability of the people that are there for the weekend. And it really feels that that's how it is now for all of us. We're cannon fodder. We have been. We've been shipped overseas to phony bankers' wars. We've been murdered overseas. We've been poisoned overseas. Now they're bringing a lot of the unused equipment now that they were using in the Gulf War back and putting them into various police departments and sheriff departments around our country. They're all contaminated with DU and other chemicals and toxins. So they know exactly what they're doing. This is a very slow kill of enjoyment. These are murderous people that do ritualistic satanic murders. And I'm right here by Bohemian Grove, one of the most satanic places that you can imagine. 2,500 acres of nothing but pedophilia and snuff films. And
well, Deborah, when you step back and take a macro view, between the cross-pollination between the computer, the biotech, the nanotech, the quantum physics, the frequencies, and these weaponized electronic weapons, I mean, it is a pretty bleak future. Jump in here, Tim and Dave, on this, because we're painting a pretty bleak picture tonight here, folks.
Well, as you know, Sheila, I've been writing about the tearing down of the family. And this is another agenda that's coming forth. Deborah had mentioned the psychotronic warfare being committed against the young because they're hooked into their wireless games so frequently. But it's even more insidious than this. And I'll keep this part brief, but I think it'd be remiss not to consider this as part of the global agenda. Just as an aside, when I was going to university, my undergrad degree was in sociology. And the father of modern sociology, who is a supreme globalist himself, but he was correct about one thing. He had a saying that he published in all his textbooks that we read back in the late 70s when I was in college. And it basically said that the family can exist without the state, but the state can never exist without the family, and the family is the building block. And what I have discovered, and I'm going to be writing an article that I'll probably release either on Sunday or Monday, is what's the purpose of CPS? How do kids drop out of CPS and get into child sex trafficking rings where they are part of these snuff films, where they're part of these massive pedophilia rings that are controlled by corporations like the former DynCorp was busted for it. No one went to jail. They paid a $400 million fine. Wells Fargo, Wachovia was busted for it. No one went to jail. They paid a $440 million fine. But what's behind all this? And what I have discovered is that CPS is working off of a mandate now being enforced through Obamacare and the Human Health Services. All agents are now federal employees. It's de facto, but nonetheless it's the same. And their goal is to rip apart the family. Sheila, up where you're at, I talked to a lady yesterday, Catherine Marion, who you should have on your show. She educated me as to how 8,000 kids in your city where you live were taken by the ministry last year. That's the American equivalent of CPS.
That is correct.
And the pattern is always the same. Are mostly the same, I should say. 85-90% of the time, what you're finding are single moms are being targeted, and their children are being ripped apart. And we're probably not going to have time to get into this tonight, but the case of Monica Wesolowski, a State Department employee who contacted me about 5 weeks ago, and she was politically targeted because she's conservative working in a liberal organization, and they're afraid, in my judgment, that she'll be a whistleblower on Benghazi. They think because of who she had associations with that she probably knows some things about child sex trafficking being run by the CIA and various corporations, and they targeted her, and they came and grabbed her kid. She's never been charged with anything, and her kid was taken from her, as was Catherine Marion's, your Vancouver resident, right in your own backyard, Sheila, and given to two gay, male, homosexual fathers. There's clear evidence in both cases, and I have dozens of stories that have come to me like this since I first wrote about this. These kids are not only being sexually molested, they're going to be put on drugs. This is the pattern because it discredits them when they go older and they make claims, and then these children are taken down to the United States economically, where our middle class now ranks 19th in the world. It's not just the fact that we're under electronic assault, we're under attack at the core part. And let me just conclude this by saying this is how it can happen to every member in the listening audience, and I want you to hear this clearly. Your child falls down roller skating. You take your child to urgent care to get stitches. It's not a big injury, but they are trained to be hyper vigilant for anything that could be remotely connected to abuse. And the next thing you know, as in the case of Monica Wesolowski, your SWAT teams and the CPS agents are with them, and they accuse you of something without ever proving it, and then they drop the charges. But once they have your kid in the system, your kid is gone. And your kid is going to live a life of hell where 70% of these kids are put on psychotropic medication. It's just absolutely a nightmare that's unfolding in this country. Canada, England, every Western democracy is having parental rights and families being destroyed. And this is the ultimate globalist attack upon the social structure of the Western democracies. I used to think it was just a CPS problem and they were all out of control across the country. This is an orchestrated plot, and I'll give you the organization who put it together. Their name is ICF. They're a globalist think tank that writes social legislation for the United Nations. And that's who, Sheila, before we go off the air tonight, I hope that I can have a moment to talk about how we need to help Monica get her son back.
This is critical, absolutely critical, because in California on January 1st of 2014, they're trying to eliminate the opt-out for children that are enrolling in school this coming year to opt out of. They don't want to allow parents to opt out their children from vaccines. So what they're requiring is that in order to opt out, you have to go to a pediatrician or an approved healthcare provider. Now, the forms that are being given for the parent to fill out when they go to the healthcare provider are parental traps. This is literally going to set up parents for their children to be taken ultimately by CPS, because what they're saying is they've been told about the necessity to be vaccinated. They recognize that they are opposing that. If their children should spread some virus or some whooping cough in the classroom, their children will have to be taken out of school. The parents are going to sign this. And there are 17 other states standing behind California now, getting ready to implement this as well. This is a massive grab of our children during enrolling of school. And on the homepage of StopTheCrime.net, we have a vaccine link at the top of the homepage. We have a huge contingency of a think tank across the country that has put together some forms that you must fill out and not fill out these traps that you will be trapped into and your children will be taken away. And you're exactly right, Dave. This, in the New World Order Exposed document, it talks about how the family will be targeted and how the family will diminish in size. They're trying to isolate us. And as far as single mothers go, single mothers now are massively being targeted with electromagnetic frequencies. I have many, many people that are calling me continuously about the intentional targeting of them by the corporate structure, by retired military, by a variety of what they call ground teams that come in and use frequencies and harassing to target these people to make them appear crazy so that then they can take the children from the parents as well. And I can only say this is amplifying globally. There are hundreds of thousands of targeted people throughout the world. And with the cell phone towers now, in fact, we know that between 3 and 4 in the morning, the cell phone towers are being turned up, and they work in conjunction with the satellite systems and your smart meters and all of your wireless. And it is disturbing sleep at night.
And baby monitors, let's not forget, Deborah, too. I mean, this is just a total subjugation on all fronts.
What I came to realize myself here is that I knew that when I jumped into this business of trying to preserve our rights, and I was dumb enough at one time to believe the answer lied in restoring the Constitution. It doesn't. It has to do with changing power structure. But when I was looking at this in the beginning of my advocacy work, I thought we could do enough, marshal enough people. No, that's not the answer here. What we're looking at is the total enslavement of humanity. They are into every fabric of our life.
Yes.
And it's been going on for some time, and we're coming to the end game. Now, the ultimate end game, as I indicated, is transhumanism. But to tear down a country, it's hard to do, especially a country as rich and powerful as the United States has been. But they've done that economically. But just beyond the economic, Sheila, it gets a lot worse than that. They're attacking us at our core. The CPS in this country, the Child Protective Services and Human Health Services of the federal government, they are the most evil organizations on the planet right now, where they look at children as commodities to be traded. In England right now, in places like Sussex, England, when they take a child from a parent, you can actually go online and look at a register to be a foster parent and the kinds of kids that you might be able to adopt. And what I've learned, and I'll give you a little preview into the article that I'm going to be writing for this Sunday or Monday, but what I've learned from my insider sources, one CIA and two are ex-Virginia CPS workers who quit. One was fired, one quit. What they have told me is fairly universal, is that there are organizations that front these foster parents. In other words, they're working for a Bechtel, or they're working for a Wells Fargo Wachovia, or they're working for the CIA. And they come in and they get their 6 or 8 kids, and then they just disappear. Just as the article I wrote last year with the Oklahoma CPS, where 80 kids just disappeared off the books. But then these people, they're finding some of them, resurface in other states. But the CPS doesn't look for these missing parents and these missing kids. They try 3 contacts to reestablish communication, to send the payments for being a foster parent to, and after the 3rd try, they give up. But some people are saying that these people resurface in another state to do the same thing, and these kids get trafficked out for unimaginable horror. And this is the bombshell I'll lead to here. I discovered this as I was looking in the aftermath of Ambassador Chris Stevens' role in Benghazi. Why did he have to be eliminated? We know he ran guns to al-Qaeda for regime change in Libya and the attempt in Syria. We also know that he was running drugs as his role in the CIA. He wasn't just an ambassador now, he was a CIA agent. But it came to light that he was also child sex trafficking. Well, this started to leak out, and members of the military overseas and some people in the intelligence agencies raised some eyebrows. Stevens had to be killed because this was 2 months before the general election in 2012, and they wanted the secrets to die right there. But this is how insidious and pervasive this problem is.
Yeah, in fact, the military is an enormous problem for sex slaves and sex trafficking.
Well, and Deborah, don't forget, Dave and I have tracked this right up to the Queens, so it's a very nefarious, insidious tentacles that go very high.
It is. I'm going to offer a movie for everyone to watch that may doubt what they're hearing this discussion. You can go watch Oranges and Sunshine. It's a documentary on true events and in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in England, and how they scooped up children, that a couple 100,000 children, took them on ships to Australia, and they became part of the Vatican's sex slaves and labor force.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's an amazing movie. It's called Oranges and Sunshine. Also, a recent movie that was released, it was called Philomena, and it talks about the Irish laundry room women, Philomena. Because there are going to be a lot of people that are listening to this that are going to have a hard time grappling with the reality that the underbelly of the elites globally is running on sex trafficking, pedophilia, ritualistic murder,
satanic ritual abuse.
It's all really the satanic ritual. Sheila, let me jump in here before this entire show disappears due to time constraints. What I have decided to do with the resources of my show and the resources of my website at thecommonsenseshow.com is to make the State Department employee with a security clearance, Monica Wesolowski's case, a watershed case. And I can't raise money for every mom in America who's been abused. I don't have the resources or the time. But I have decided to throw my efforts into Monica's case because it's so typical of what's going on, and also, too, because she's a State Department employee and she's been targeted because they think she's a matter of a leak with regard to Benghazi. That's the political backdrop. But what's happened here is her boy right now is being sexually molested. I've seen the proof. If this were in Arizona, because I'm a former mental health counselor, I would have to report this to the authorities. Yet the CPS there and the Department of Family Services and the Assistant County Attorney, Chris Sigler, in the state of Virginia, these people have all been given this information by Monica with the evidence that this kid is being sexually molested, and given the comments of the 2 gay foster fathers, he's probably being sex trafficked, he's being neglected, he's gone back to pooping in his pants and going back into diapers. He has all the hallmark traits of a kid that's being abused. and she has been denied legal representation. She has medical reports saying the son was never abused in her care from pediatricians that aren't admitted into evidence, and this whole system serves as judge, jury, and executioner. And because she dared to come on my show and tell her story, Magda Alarcon, a social worker from the Department of Family Services, Virginia, basically has told Monica's therapist that she, in-home therapist, mandated, is that she is going to lose her child, lose visitation rights, and this same person is putting pressure on this in-home therapist to write a phony psych eval on Monica because they can't get her on anything else, get her on the fact that she's crazy, which is the default position of all CPS agencies when they want to take the kid. And we have now found a lawyer, and I engaged in a fundraising effort this week in which to date we've raised $15,000. The fundraising company takes about 9%. Monica's going to need at least $20,000 to carry this through. And Sheila, as we had talked about earlier, I wanted to promote the fundraising. We've only got about 7,000 more we need to raise. We've really got to get to about 22,000 to have the 20,000 because of the off-the-top.
Well, yeah, and Dave, I'm encouraging tonight folks to go to the website, go to weekendvigilante.com, folks, and click on the link where it says Dave Hodges, and there's a little link there. Click on it, and you can donate to this very important fight against CPS. Because as we've alluded to here in this show,
Sheila, let me throw this in here real quick too, because that link will give you one way to donate, but not everybody has a credit card. And I also have this story on my website. It's up there right now as the #1 story. It'll remain on the front page for the next couple of weeks because that's where I'm going to keep it. And the story is called CPS versus the Preservation of the Family. Will you help? And I talk about Monica's story generally and link into the original. And I'll tell you, I've had people writing to me for the last 2 weeks when I first covered this and saying this moved them to tears. This was the worst thing they'd ever seen. But Monica's story is typical. It's not atypical. This isn't the exceptional case. This is the norm that's going on in America right now. And so, yes, you can go to my website at thecommonsenseshow.com or Sheila's website and link into how to make a PayPal or credit card donation. But for those of you, and we've heard from a number of people that want to send a check by snail mail, get your pencils handy. And in just a moment, when you have your pencils, I'm going to go ahead and give you the address to donate. But what we're doing in Monica's case, and I'm just kind of stalling for time here, Sheila, while they grab the pencil and paper, but what we're doing in Monica's case is we found a lawyer that's going to attack the fabric of the system, not just to get her son back, but to actually tear down this criminal organization that we call Child Protective Services that operates in an unconstitutional manner. Anyway, to donate to Monica by snail mail, Monica with a K, Monika, Wesolowski, WESOLOWSKI, Monica Wesolowski, P.O. Box 40926, P.O. Box 40926, 1210 South Glebe Road. It's 1210 South GLEBE Road, Arlington, Virginia. We got a bunch of numbers here with the zip code because it's a mailbox. 22204-9998. Again, that's Arlington, Virginia, 22204-998. It's also on my website in the article at the very bottom if your pencil or pen wasn't working properly. Sheila, thanks for letting me put this out because this could be the case that we use that will blow this up in front of America to show how our families are being undermined and our kids are being abused by the globalists.
Well, you're right, Dave, and there's just total subjugation on all fronts. And, I mean, there's so much more to get into here. We're going to have to, Deborah, we want to have you come back on the show. Folks, weekendvigilante.com. Click on Deborah's website, stopthecrime.net. We'll have her back on soon. So much more to get into, but thanks for tuning in, folks.